If you're able to experience love, memories, friendship, and even dreams, then that should make you a human being, right? Well, this isn't the case for the students of Hilsum in England. Kazuo Ishiguro forces the reader to reflect on this dilemma by making us look through memories of a tragic student's life. Hello everyone, my name is Frank. Welcome to my YouTube channel. And this video will do the plot summary of this book, Never Let Me Go. We'll do the plot summary and we'll do characters analysis and even kind of discussing some themes within this book. Once again, the book's called Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, and I think this is my second book from his collection. I'm liking him a lot actually. It's quite enjoy his reading and his prose and just reading. Writing style altogether. So yeah, I also have a podcast on Spotify if you want to go check that out. If you want to basically listen to this analysis of this book, you can check me out on Spotify. It's in an audio format, so it's in a podcast format. So I'll leave that in down in the description, a link to my podcast. And further ado, let's get to this book. So basically, this book is a blend of a little bit of sci-fi and a coming of age story. And if you enjoy basically three teenagers coming to an age and a little bit of a dark twist at the end, then I think you should go read this book. And so from this point on, the video does contain spoilers. So let's get right to it. The story is set in an alternate version of England in the 1990s. The narrator is Kathy H. Her occupation is called the carer. Her career as the carer seems to be coming to an end after 12 years of working. She makes an impression about how successful her professional career has been and how she has taken care of a lot of patients. Those patients are referred to the readers as donors, and basically she also talks about how many of her donors seems to do really well after multiple donations. And then she starts reminiscing about one of her old donors, Ruth, who she seems to have a long history with. And then she starts reminiscing more about her past, especially during her schooling year at Hilsum. Hilsum is a secluded English boarding school located in a quiet countryside somewhere in North England. On the surface, it feels like a typical school where students take classes, create art, play games, and are even encouraged to express themselves. The guardians, or teachers also, like Miss Emily, who happens to be the headmaster, and Miss Lucy and others are polite but distant. And there seems to be a sense of mystery always lingering beneath their calm presence. And then once again, the time flashes back to a moment where an angry kid is stomping on the ground for being picked on by other boys. And that kid happens to be named Tommy. Tommy's quite a prevalent character in the book and for Kathy's, the narrator's, life. And this is the moment where they first meet. They were 13 at this point. So apparently Tommy is constantly picked on by other boys. And he wasn't really well liked. And he wasn't well liked for two main reasons. The first one was the fact that he's short-tempered, quite sensitive. And the second reason was the fact that he was deemed to not be creative enough. Creativity was a huge part of Hilsum. They had this thing called gallery, where the best art such as painting, poems, and other arts from the students of Hilsum were collected by a woman named Madam. Madam is prevalent to the story. Also, she's more of a basically in charge of the school, or like right above headmaster. That's what it seems like. But basically, for the art, no one knew where the art went. Just the fact that having your art being collected by Madam and being collected for the gallery was a huge honor. So the students collectively tried their best to have their art collected. And once again, Tommy deemed not being creative enough and barely getting his art collected. This got to him until a teacher named Miss Lucy told him that, hey, maybe being creative doesn't really matter as much as we say it does. So this definitely eased up Tommy's inability to having his art getting selected. Going back to Ruth and Kathy, it seems like they've known each other since childhood. But and as they've grown up together, Ruth is perceived as a Miss Know-It-All. This title follows her around for some time. In one of her childhood story, Ruth claims to be a chess whiz, but Kathy soon realizes that Ruth is lying and she knows absolutely nothing about chess. This realization embarrasses Ruth and she gets mad at Kathy. This type of friendship dynamic continues throughout their whole friendship. During one of their school days, the class takes a field trip to pavilion. As they're walking out of the pavilion, it rains, so the students huddle up together as a group. And then they wait until the rain is over or the rain passes. And then the students kind of starts chatting. They start chatting about their life after Hilton. And even one of the students talks about pursuing an acting career in America. Everyone seems to be in good spirit, chatting about their future and chatting about their life after the school. I think this is the turning point of the book. This is when one of the teacher, Miss Lucy, that's when she interrupts the students and basically spills the truth about the students' future and the life in Hilton. While interrupting, while talking to the students, she seems visibly and emotionally distraught. She starts to rant about how no one's going to America, no one's going to have an acting career, but they will only have one future, and that future is full of despair. She tells them that students' only purpose is to have their body harvested and used for organ donation over and over until they die. The worst part is the students don't revolve. It feels like they've always kind of known their fate, but just kind of prefer to believe that they could still think of possibly having a different freedom from this type of fate. Time pass. They're back in school. Kathy soon learns that other students are having sex around campus. She's curious about this new phenomena going around the campus, and she wants to partake in it. She ends up picking Henry to practice for having sex because she has no emotional connection. But she keeps on delaying having sex with Henry because she kind of starts having feelings for Tommy now, who just recently broke up with Ruth. But Ruth approaches Kathy and asks Kathy if Kathy could help rekindle the broken relationship between Ruth and Tommy. Ruth admits making a mistake, breaking up with Tommy. This ends up hurting Kathy, but still wants to be a good friend and wants to help Ruth out. So she promises to get Ruth and Tommy back together again. And while talking to Tommy about getting back in a relationship with Ruth, Tommy just seems bothered by an earlier interaction with Lucy. This happened earlier that week, right before Kathy ends up talking to Tommy about this. So basically, Tommy tells Kathy about the situation. Apparently, Miss Lucy apologizes from an incident years ago where Miss Lucy told Tommy that his art and being creative didn't matter. Apparently, she changed her mind and she takes her word back, and she says to Tommy that art and being creative did matter now. And this was devastating for Tommy to hear. And apparently, Miss Lucy has been distraught at the school for how they were teaching and handling the students' life at Hilton. And this inevitably makes Miss Lucy leave the school and never return, and also once again devastates Tommy. But eventually, Tommy gets back with Ruth, and they stay together for the remainder of their time in Hilton. And this is the end of part 1. Kathy and Ruth and Tommy move to a place called the Cottages. So apparently it's supposed to be a stepping stone right before they start donating organs. They're supposed to be there for 2 years. There's older students in the cottages. They're called the veterans, and the group ends up making really good friends with a veteran couple, Rodney and Chrissy, who happens to take really keen interest on Ruth. Ruth even starts mimicking them, trying to be cool as possible and mature, and she even likes attention from the couple. Um, she makes fun of Tommy and Kathy for not being the same level as she is in terms of maturity. Ruth wanted to mature as soon as possible, and that's one thing that's quite prevalent within this part. She even threw away her art collection from Hailsham as she thought it was too childish to hold on to sentimental things or holding on to things from that time. Apparently, Chrissy and Rodney alludes to spotting Ruth as possible. The possibles basically were the clones like Ruth, Kathy, and Tommy get their DNA from, or basically possibles are the clones' biological parents. So apparently the couple's spots her Ruth as possible working at an office in Norfolk, and this excites Ruth a lot. And so apparently finding your possible is a very hot topic among the students in the cottages because it can tell um, the clones or the students at the cottages to see what a normal life would have been like for them outside of the boarding school of Halesman or outside of cottages. They could have kind of given the glimpse of a normal life for the students. So the group decides to take a road trip up to Norfolk and look for Ruth as possible. Once in Norfolk, the group takes a lunch break, and that's when Rodney and Chrissy discuss the rumors about being deferred or deferrals. So apparently, if two students are really in love, they can apply for deferral. That's basically a few extra years before they start donating or pause of donation. This idea is quite fascinating, especially for Ruth, because she really wants to be deferred with Tommy. So this is more of a bittersweet journey to Norfolk because they find the woman and soon realize that she looks nothing like Ruth, and that is not her possible. Ruth is absolutely crushed. She lashes out, says harsh things like how they're possible are probably criminals or sex workers or like low life people, and not the office worker like Ruth was hoping for. So one day back in the cottages, Ruth and Tommy are having a heated argument, and kind of Kathy gets dragged into it. Ruth starts making fun of Tommy's art and just calls it absurd. This makes Tommy mad. Eventually, after some time, during summer of their second year, Ruth kind of admits to Kathy that Ruth and Tommy might be breaking up and might be parting ways after the cottages. She then also tells Kathy that Tommy doesn't see her as a girlfriend type, which ends up hurting Kathy's feeling. And then Kathy decides to leave the cottages without telling the group and start her career as carer a little bit early on. And this is the end of part 2. Part 3. It's been 7 years since Kathy left the cottages. She bumps into Laura, one of her old Halesman friends. She notices the physical and emotional toll that has taken over her since Laura became a carer also. While Laura was back in the school, back in Hilsham, she was described as carefree, humorous, and lively. But Laura is no longer that after working as carer. Laura and Kathy talk about the rumors of Ruth's first donation. Apparently her first donation went really bad and she isn't doing the best physically. Laura suggests Kathy to become Ruth's carer for the time being, and she rejects it immediately, claiming that their friendship ended in a very sour note. Eventually, Kathy kind of changes her mind after hearing the rumor of Halesham being shut down soon. All these memories kind of flood back into her, and she has a change in heart. And she's ready to go see Ruth again and be her carer. Their initial meeting between Ruth and Kathy seems to be tense due to having a difficult time reconnecting with each other. And there just seems to be a little bit of distance among both of them, just because they haven't seen each other for some time. But during one of their session, out of the blue, Ruth asks Kathy to go see an abandoned ship several ways from the hospital. They just wanted to escape the monotony of the hospital life. And Kathy agrees to it, and they decide to invite Tommy too. So now Kathy and Ruth arrives at Kingsfield Center. This is where Tommy is um, living at right now. He is basically recovering from his second donation. And she picks him up, and the three of them make their way to their abandoned ship. Kathy notices how weak Ruth and Tommy's body has gotten, especially after multiple donation on Tommy's end. And they finally see the boat. They get nostalgic, and then they return back. During their car ride back, while three of them are discussing their life in Hailsham, Ruth has an emotional outburst with Kathy. She apologizes to Kathy for two things. The first one was how she shamed Kathy for having high sexual urges. And then the second one was how she kept Kathy and Tommy apart for so long. She always kind of knew that Kathy and Tommy were in love or they liked each other. And it's the fact that she regrets keeping them separated for so long. Ruth pleads Kathy to become Tommy's carer and apply for deferral because Ruth feels like she doesn't have enough time. And she even has a dress of madams so where they can have a direct contact to her. This is basically Ruth's way of saying sorry. Eventually, after Ruth's second donation, while on the verge of dying, Ruth and Kathy share an emotional exchange where Kathy finally decides to become Tommy's carer, and then Ruth passes away after her second donation. Kathy and Tommy make their way to Madam's estate, where they're looking to get deferred and pause on their donation duties. Kathy and Tommy meet with Madam at Northampton. Madam is initially worried to see the couple, but her mood eases up, and then she even invites them to her house for a chat. The couple asks for deferral and how they're in love, but Madam questions their love and finds their request for deferral disingenuous. And then Miss Hemley, the headmaster, joins the conversation, who happens to live with Madam at this time. And Miss Emily confirms that there is no deferral program and it was only a rumor. And this devastates Tommy and Kathy. But eventually Tommy asks Miss Emily one more question. He asks her about the art and the purpose of that art being collected. So Miss Emily talks about how Hailsham is different compared to other school, and she starts talking about the history of clones. Before Hailsham, people like Kathy, who were called clones, were brought up solely for donations, and they were looked at not as human, or they were even often looked at below as humans. Hailsham and few others wanted to show the rest of the world that they were in fact more deserving to be looked at rather than just for their donations. So they educated and cultured and humanized the clones. Their arts, poems, and paintings were collected to show that they had soul. Eventually, everything kind of changed when the controversial Dr. Morningdale in Scotland started experimenting to modify humans. He tried making them into superhumans, and this ended up changing the normal or the masses' opinion about the clones altogether. This experiment instilled fear into public, thinking that super clone production could exist, and then the clones went back to being looked as less human. They still needed donation because how integrated they were into the society, but seeing them as humans or seeing them having souls was gone. Slowly by slowly, Hailsman and others alike were shutting down for lack of support and funding. So apparently there's no deferral. Love, creativity, and humanity, none of it changes their fate. For Kathy, it's crushing, and for Tommy, it's crushing. The idea that their feeling meant something was just a hope. And then they end up returning back to Kingsfield. This is when Tommy asks Kathy that he wants another carer, which she obliges to. Tommy soon completes his fourth donation, and that's when he dies also. And by the end, Kathy is alone. Ruth and Tommy, her closest tie to the past, are gone. As she nears the end of her own time, she reflects on their shared life. She stops by a field, imagining Tommy's there, as memory clings in the wind-blown trash to a fence, stuck, fluttering. There's no rage in her voice, only sorrow and acceptance. That's what makes the ending so haunting. The fact that she doesn't fight, she just simply carries out her fate and just remembers and does not want to let go. And this is the end of the book. The ending is crazy, man. This is probably one of my favorite endings in like a very long time. It's just the fact that, I'm just so used to having some sort of rebellious force or like a rebellious revolution kind of having in this kind of dystopian novel. They seem to kind of find a way to escape and just like live on their life happily, but um, just kind of seeing that she just accepts her fate and just basically finishes her life donating to um, quite tragic, but it's a great ending, at least in my end. So after this, let's do some character analysis. Okay, so the first one, Ruth. I think she's probably is my favorite character in this book because she's written very nicely. She almost feels way too real in a way because I feel like I've had enough encounter or I know somebody very closely who acts like Ruth and is Ruth basically. You know, I guess I would describe her as being insecure or even deeply insecure. She's assertive, manipulative, and deeply insecure. She often pretends to know more than what she really does. She kind of represents regret also, where she regrets keeping Tommy and Kathy apart for so long, but also regrets not maturing fast enough. I feel like this kind of that regret kind of also extends to being regret or like kind of regretting her own existence. Cause yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. For Tommy, I would describe Tommy as softy. Initially, Tommy is written as a boy that is emotional, sensitive, even hot-headed. But more than not, I feel like he's more misunderstood than anything. Once he starts kind of maturing, he becomes more reflective and curious and more appreciative on art and um, just his life altogether. I feel like he, especially at the end where he kind of knows that the deferral is just a rumor or it's not possible, and I feel like he kind of just accepts that fact, and more so he just kind of wants to live his life out now with other fellow people that are donating at Kingsfield. I feel like he embodies hope, especially when he's very hopeful on getting deferred, and he even tries to make his art um, impersonable for the sole purpose of getting deferred with Kathy at that time. So for Kathy, I say she's observant. She's quiet, reflective, and deeply introspective. I feel like as a narrator, she guides us through her memories, and those memories are sometimes unreliable, but then sometimes painfully detailed and clear on certain events on the book. And I feel like she represents acceptance, somewhat similar to Tommy in a way that I don't know. She's just kind of accepted the tragedy of her life and accepted the tragedy of others, and which kind of makes her a witness and a victim of this story. It's very haunting. Like Kathy's story is quite haunting, and I feel like she's also very mature in a lot of her books. Like when and a lot of these like short stories inside of the book, where there's kind of the narrator's kind of talking about her life with Ruth growing up. Ruth is like absolutely the meanie girl or the mean girl in the the playground or the play yard, and Kathy's just kind of there. It's just like a good friend you want to have. Yeah. So these are the three main characters that I just kind of want to talk about, and after that I'll do the themes now. So jumping back to the acceptance. Once again, acceptance probably is the most integral part of this book, at least in my opinion. I feel like the characters, the students, they never try to escape their cruel fate. Instead of accepting it, instead they just accept it with or without dignity. The absence of rebellious movement forces the reader to reflect on how the systems are able to control the people that live in it. Another theme is memory. This is a relevant theme for Kazuo Ishiguro writing. I feel like for Kathy and others, since they have no family and no documented history and even no future, memory is the only thing that they have. And it kind of becomes quite evident that this is their only form of identity. And that's why Kathy's so desperate on clinging onto them, especially at the end where she's the only one staying alive, or she's the only one that's alive still, where Tommy and Ruth are gone, and all she has is her memories of them and her memories of the school. Without these memories, her identity would simply just dissolve. The last one, the question of humanity, right? Clones are human, but the society chooses not to see them. In the world of this novel, clones like Kathy, Tommy, and Ruth are basically biologically human. Biologically, you cannot separate them, but and they think, they feel, they dream, they love. The clones grow up with art, literature, friendship, heartbreaks, dreams, memories. Every part of this upbringing at Hilsham is designed to prove their humanity. The guardians or the teachers even collect their art to show the outside world that the clones have souls. But why aren't they treated like real people? I think it's just a simple answer: because the society has decided it's more convenient not to see them more than just sack of organs or sack of donations. I think this basically does my video. Thanks for joining in. I hope you had a good time with me talking about this book. This is a great book. Ishiguro is one of my favorite writers, for sure. This is probably my second book. I think second or third book. I'm not sure. I don't remember. I know I said that in the beginning of the video, but this is awesome. If you have time, I think you should definitely check this one out. And I know there's the movie with what's his name, Andrew Garfield, Keira Knightley, and all of them. And I think I'm gonna watch that movie next because I haven't watched that movie yet. So yeah. Once again, thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a good day. Thank you.